I've set myself a challenge. I'm going to try and make one video every day between now and the Leaving Cert that's under 5 minutes and covers 5 relevant topics. Here we go. Number 1, I'll start with paper 1, the marking scheme. One of the things that a lot of students don't understand is the importance of coherence in the marking scheme. If you don't understand what that means, if you're getting marks back and your coherence marks aren't good, it means you're not planning properly. So you need to work on the way you introduce, keep your introduction short, question facing, use the question as your guideline, use the words in the question or synonyms of the word, get to the point and move on. Then make sure you develop your paragraphs with a clear plan. Don't write for the sake of writing. Don't fill up the page with lots and lots and lots of information without thinking before you write why that information is relevant to the question under discussion. When you're moving from one point to the next, make sure that you have continuity links between paragraphs so that it doesn't feel as if the essay is random and that there is no connection between one point and the one that follows it. There must be a sense of continuity. Finally, write a very brief conclusion. Don't analyze your conclusion. Just make sure that you reiterate or restate the central point that you made at the beginning of the essay, which you then proved or tried to prove in the body of the essay. That's what coherence means. I might come back to that at a later date, but that's 38 seconds. Let's keep it going. I'm going to go on now and I'm going to talk about Macbeth for a very short period of time. Don't forget, what I'm doing here is I'm just using the mind maps document, which contains, in my humble opinion, everything you need to know in preparation for your Leaving Cert. I'm going to go to one quote by Macduff, and this is the quote I'm going to go to. Okay, so it is from Act 2, Scene 4, and this is Macduff, and he's speaking to Ross and an old man. And as he leaves, having heard that Macbeth is to be crowned king at Scone, he says to Ross, "Well, may you see things done there. Adieu, lest our old robes sit easier than our new." Now, lads, that's a great quote. Learn that quote. What have you got? You've got imagery, the robes imagery. You've got his insights into Macbeth. Don't forget, we learned so much about Macbeth from listening to what other characters say about him. Here we have Macduff at the very outset, before Macbeth is even crowned king, suspecting that he is not going to be a good king for Scotland. So when he says our old robes, he's referring to Duncan. When he says our new, he's referring to Macbeth. And what he is saying is he fears that the reign of King Macbeth will not be a comfortable reign for Scotland. He was correct. And when you're writing an essay on imagery, you can use that quote. When you're writing an essay on power and the abuse of power or kingship, you can use that quote. When you're writing an essay on corruption in the play and you're showing that there are decent, noble characters in the play, you can use that quote. If you're writing an essay about how the play is a negative depiction of humanity, if you like that general vision and viewpoint question, you can use that quote. So it's a great quote to use, and that's Macduff. Next, we're going to go to do a little bit of poetry. And we're going to talk very briefly about Patrick Kavanagh, who I think is a poet who could easily appear on your paper this year. Now, Patrick Kavanagh is one of the 4 Irish poets prescribed for study this year. I believe that at least 2 of the poets that come up on the paper will be Irish, and I'm going to dip in and out of them over these videos. I want to just very quickly mention Advent by Patrick Kavanagh. Patrick Kavanagh, the fundamental, if you want to understand his poetry, the fundamental thing he was interested in was the idea that we can find spiritual contentment, peace, happiness by simplifying our lives. He communicates that in the poem Advent when he says, "We have tested and tasted too much lover," which means by overcomplicating our lives, by overexposing ourselves to the world, we make our lives more complicated, we make our lives more complex, and we make ourselves more unhappy. He says in a brilliant metaphor, "Through a chink too wide there comes in no wonder." I mean, a fantastic example of imagery. So the more we know, the more the world loses its beauty. So the less we know, the more mystery there is in the world and the more exciting the world is. He values childhood, He values the idea of being a child because he thinks that that's innocent and that children are inspired, or sorry, that children are inspirational because they look at the world through awe, through surprise, through joy, and they embrace the world. And he says, if you can simplify your life, don't complicate it by overthinking why you feel better, just feel better. Oh, after Christmas, we'll have no need to go searching for the difference that sets an old phrase burning. Nearly there now. The penultimate thing I want to talk about every day when I do one of these is an interesting quote that could be used in a personal essay or in a speech. Here's a quote from William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. It's one of my favourite quotes of all time, and it's Cassius saying, "Men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." Shakespeare was a genius. What does it mean? It means that we have to take responsibility for our own lives, that it is easy to blame others and fate for what happens to us, but ultimately we have power, we have independence of action, and we are able to take control of our lives. I'm 5 minutes and 15 seconds. The final thing I want to do is give my historical fact of the day. And as a history teacher, and I know many of you are history students, I want to do this in every one of these videos. My historical fact of the day is this. Between 1933 and 1934, it is estimated that 3.9 million Ukrainians died as a result of a famine that was caused by the policy of collectivization in Stalinist Soviet Union. Is it any wonder that the Ukrainians don't want to be dominated by their neighbouring country again? What was that? 6 minutes. First effort, not bad. See you tomorrow.